Posting transactions. The posting screen, as the name suggests, should be used to maintain general ledger transactions. All ledger transactions are filtered by period and are grouped in batches. Before recording transactions, we have to choose the posting period from the pick list on the top right corner. Only transactions with dates in the selected period will be allowed. We'll then select Batch Properties. We start with the type of batch. There are three types you can choose from: Bank, Journal, and Open Balance. All transactions posted to the bank type of batch will be balanced by the automatic transaction to the nominated bank account. All bank transactions will be displayed in the reconciliation screen, where you can reconcile these against the bank statement. Transactions posted to the journal batch will not be listed on the reconciliation screen, and if the batch is unbalanced, the program will balance it with the transaction to the temporary holding account, which can later be changed to the appropriate account. Open balance transactions are similar to the journal transactions, except that they do not generate GST codes and therefore can be used for transferring the data from other ledger programs. Let's create a bank batch of check account represented by account number 1850. To start a new transaction, we simply enter date, transaction reference if we have any, then we have to select an account number. If you do not remember the account number, use the account pick list. You can activate this by clicking on the button in the account number column or by pressing the F4 function key while you're in the account number column. Either way, the account pick list will be displayed. The pick list displays the client chart of accounts by default. However, if you can't find the account in the client chart, you can try locating it in the master chart. If you choose the account from a master chart, Ledger Assistant will automatically generate this account in the client's chart of accounts. When you pick an account in the bank or journal batch, the appropriate GST code will be displayed. This code tells the system if it has to extract GST portion from the transaction. The account charts have the default GST codes for each of the accounts, but you can overwrite these in the posting screen. Assistant uses many GST codes to ensure there is enough information to generate accurate GST reports or BAS forms. The first character in the code represents the GST category. N stands for no GST, C for GST collected, and P for GST paid. The pending number represents the item in the BAS worksheet, where the value will be displayed. We will leave the default GST code for this transaction and complete the transaction by entering the amount and description. To save the transaction, simply tab across to a new line. Let's now enter an expense account which does not exist in both the client chart and master chart. We choose account number 7111. As we attempt to leave the account number column, the new account property window will pop up so we can create the account without leaving the data entry screen. Most of the parameters were taken from the header account 7100, which is building maintenance expenses. Let's rename the account to Office Equipment and complete the transaction. Account 3510 is GST collected and 3520 is GST paid. We haven't posted any transactions to these accounts. Assistant has extracted GST automatically from the transaction which had GST indicators. Usually you do not post directly to GST accounts unless you transfer balances from another program. There are several tools available in the posting screen which you can utilize to make the data entry easier. For instance, you can activate the batch properties by clicking on this button. In the batch property window, you can choose columns to be auto-repeated, columns to be skipped so you do not have to implicitly tab across these columns. You can choose to display quantity columns or GST amount column, which is handy when you need to adjust default GST amounts. Instead of having debit and credit columns, you may choose to have only amount columns where negative amounts will be treated as a credit amount. You can mark this checkbox to use the selected batch options as default options for the new batches. When the system auto repeats the transaction date, you can use the plus or minus keys on the keyboard to select the next or previous date. There are a few transaction journal wizards available in the posting screen, which can be used in generating closing stock transactions, partnership and trust distributions, or managing members' account allocation in the super fund. The split transaction option enables you to create some transactions to different accounts, which will be linked to the single transaction header. This header will be displayed in the reconciliation screen as per bank statement instead of listing all separate transactions. It is possible to create groups of recurring transactions in this area. Enter the description of the recurring transaction and all associated transactions in the table at the bottom of the screen. In the first column, you can enter Y for yes if you wish the transactions to form a split transaction. Click on the tick button to apply the recurring transactions. You can also reproduce required transactions utilizing a copy-paste technique. To copy the transactions, you have to select the transactions by clicking on the first and then last transaction you wish to copy while holding the Shift key on the keyboard. The undesired transactions can be unselected by holding the Control key and clicking on the transaction. The selected transactions will be highlighted. Right-click on the transactions and select Copy Transaction in the pop-up menu. You can then paste the transactions in this or another batch. You can do this by right-clicking and selecting Paste Transactions from the pop-up menu. We have pasted transactions to the same batch, but we could also paste these to a new batch. To start a new batch, we have to click on the Batch menu button and select New Batch. We then select the batch type. From here we can paste the same transactions again but to the new batch.